Hi, I'm Justin Boyd.
I'm Brittany Pacheco.
Hi, I'm still alive.
I'm Marcy Gonzalez.
And we are the Watchers in the Basement.
George, we're glad you're still alive. We're glad you're with us.
Thank God.
Thank you.
For this
Thank you,
special episode. Welcome to the Watchers in the Basement. We are here today to talk about one of the summer's biggest blockbusters. That's right. We're here to talk about Oppenheimer, the story of American theoretical physicist J. Robert Oppenheimer and his role in the development of the atomic bomb. And before I get everybody's thoughts on the movie, I want to hit you with some Oppenheimer facts. The movie was released July 21st, 2023, so almost exactly a month ago. And if you haven't seen the movie, don't worry, because this Sunday, as we're recording now, it's Tuesday, August 22nd. But this upcoming Sunday, August 27th, is National Cinema Day at theaters across the nation. And for that day only, you can see any movie in any format for only $4 a ticket. So if you haven't seen Oppenheimer and you're watching this right now, wait till Sunday. You can see it in IMAX if there's an IMAX in your area for only $4. Pretty good deal. So anyway, I digress. The movie has made a box office of $718 million, making it the fourth highest grossing movie of 2023. It's the highest grossing World War II related film ever, and the fifth highest grossing R-rated film of all time. I want to run y'all through some of these. So what do y'all think? Obviously, this year, what's the highest grossing movie this year? Does anybody know?
Barbie?
Almost. It probably will be by
Was it Spider-Man? Wait, when did Spider-Man come out? God, it's been so long.
Mario. Maybe.
Yeah, Mario. So
Mario.
Super Mario Brothers.
Wow,
At one
that
point,
was such a good movie.
yeah, so 1.3 billion. It's currently the highest grossing movie, followed by Barbie, who's at 1.2 million or 1.2 billion. I'm sorry. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, 845 million. Number 3. Number 4 is Oppenheimer, 718 million. And at number 5 is Fast X. It's 704 million. And then I mentioned it's now the fifth highest grossing R-rated film of all time. Does anyone venture a guess? What's the highest grossing R-rated film ever?
Something that's got Samuel L. Jackson.
George, you're close. That's actually number 3 all time.
Wow.
It's a movie we talked about a lot in our first year doing the podcast.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Like all I can think about is just Game of Thrones, and that's not a movie though. But I don't know. We give up, Justin.
A lot.
Joker is the highest grossing.
Yes.
That was a high. Wow.
Yeah, at 1 billion. So
such a good movie.
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, back to the facts. Let's hit those real quick before I get everybody's thoughts. And like I said, the movie made 718 million with a budget of only 100 million. So obviously there's some profit there. Runtime of 3 hours. It is, of course, is written and directed by Christopher Nolan. The score is by Ludwig Göransson, and I'll talk about that a little bit later, some more. And then the cast includes, and I mean, it's an all-star cast. It's going to take me a little bit, so give me a second. Cillian Murphy, Emily Blunt, Matt Damon, Robert Downey Jr., Florence Pugh, Josh Hartnett, Casey Affleck, Rami Malek, Kenneth Branagh, Benny Safdie, Jason Clarke, Tom Conti, David Dastmalchian, Dane DeHaan, Alden Ehrenreich, Matthew Modine, Jack Quaid, Josh Peck, and Gary Oldman. Now, Marcy, I want to throw to you first, since you've seen the movie the most recently out of all of us. What are your thoughts on Oppenheimer?
I thought the movie was good. It was a solid movie. The cast, like you mentioned, was stellar. Everybody played their parts so well. Even people that I was like, oh, really? Like this person is cast in it, like Josh Peck. I like nothing against Josh Peck. He's just not the type of actor I would have thought would be an Oppenheimer. He's more of like a comedic role type of guy. He was good in it. Hated Jason. I mean, Jason Clarke did such a great job that I hated him so much during, the hearings. And he's always like an asshole in like most of the movies he's in. So like, I always just kind of hate him automatically. But he did a even better job of me getting to hate him in this movie. Obviously, Cillian Murphy did a great job. So yeah, I think the story was great. The cast was superb. And I think that all combined to make it a really good movie. I didn't even fall asleep, and I tend to fall asleep in movies. So good job, Oppenheimer.
Way to go, Nolan. You kept Marcy awake for the full 3 hours. So congrats. George, I know we've talked about the length of the movie for a little while now. What are your overall thoughts? And did the movie, was it too long for you?
It was an explosive film.
Yeah.
No, literally. No, it was a good movie. The pace did feel kind of slow to me, just because it felt like this movie, to me, it cinematically was amazing. The score, beautiful, amazing. But it did feel like I was just watching a movie about fucking meetings the entire time.
Yeah.
Like, you're in a room, they're discussing, they're talking, and like, I mean, Christopher Nolan did an amazing job of making that interesting. Like, as I like history, I like learning about history. So I remember them talking about Oppenheimer and his involvement with all this stuff, but I didn't know the details of everything. So it was still pretty cool to learn all that stuff, because I'm also like fascinated about World War II history and everything like that. So, I mean, just doing a good job of explaining these things in great detail, and I don't know, just getting to see that play out, like, was amazing. I love the black and white parts, everything, how it was filmed. I wish I could have saw it in IMAX. That would have been amazing. I'm sure it would have been a lot different. We missed a big part of the movie, like just the aspect wise, you know. If you compare the 70 millimeter IMAX slide compared to just what we saw, it's not even close. So, I mean, hopefully hopefully we get more IMAX theaters in the future, because I think this movie was a very a good spokesperson for all these that people want to see movies and film.
Yeah, no, that's a great point, because this movie was shot. It was filmed in a combination of IMAX 65 millimeter and large format film. And as you mentioned, the way that Christopher Nolan intended all of us to see it was an IMAX 70 millimeter. And there are only 30 of these theaters in the whole world. We're all based in Texas. There's only 2 in Texas. There's one in San Antonio, the AMC River Center 11 in IMAX. And then there's one in Dallas, the Cinemark 17 in IMAX. So if you're in San Antonio or Dallas, try to see this movie if it's still showing in IMAX, because as George mentioned, there's a lot visually that we didn't get to see, seeing it in the standard format. Brittany, what's your take on the movie?
I mean, pretty much similar to what both Marcy and George have already said. I, like George, have a great fascination with the World War II era. And for someone who is not savvy with science, like science is my worst subject in school when I was in school, right? That's why I was an art major. But to kind of delve into more of the physics talk, even though I didn't understand it, just to see these great minds work together and create the ultimate destruct I can't say that word, the ultimate weapon.
Yep.
And just to see kind of from start to finish how it began, and what all that it took to get the test done, right? Because that's pretty much, spoiler alert, y'all, that's really all that you get when it comes down to the atomic bomb, right? Still has an explosive effect. My eardrum like nearly burst because it was just so loud. And it was incredibly fascinating. For someone not understanding, of course, the science and the physics and what have you, but learning more about Oppenheimer himself, because I didn't realize everything that he went through post the atomic bomb and post World War II, and how this court hearing, or I guess you could call it a court hearing, really impacted the rest of his life and also that of his children. Went down a rabbit hole, y'all. It's very fascinating history, and the very fact that it is based on true events. This isn't like Christopher Nolan's adaptation of what may or may not have happened with Oppenheimer. This is legit. So really fascinating. To talk about the cast really quick, I nearly lost my shit when I saw Josh Hartnett, because I think the last time I saw him was in Pearl Harbor. And I kept looking at him. I'm like, no way, that can't be him. Like, I got really excited. Like the 90s heartthrob came out in this movie. And it's just so, I don't know, it was really funny to me. But I thought it was a very well done cast. And I mean, Christopher Nolan, my goodness, like he knows what he's doing. And it was a long movie. I felt it paced well. Maybe the first 30 minutes or so are a little long, but it told a good story, even as it was going back and forth with present history or present time and then flashback and that kind of thing. I just thought it was an extremely well done movie. It kept your attention. And like Marcy, didn't fall asleep.
That's awesome. None of us fell asleep. So congrats to Christopher Nolan.
Yay.
Good job. My take on the movie is that, I think only Christopher Nolan could turn a biopic about a scientist into a summer blockbuster. I mean, think about that, how crazy that is. But like, it's like I said, it's one of the highest grossing movies of the year. It's made over $700 million worldwide. Like y'all have kind of mentioned, I knew the name Oppenheimer. I knew he was like considered the father of the atomic bomb, but I knew nothing about the backstory, his story. And, to take something like that obviously was pivotal in the history of this country, but also the world, and to kind of, give us kind of a history lesson in an entertaining way. I definitely enjoyed it. As far as just the film itself, it's like all Nolan movies. It's visually stunning. It felt, it sounded like a Nolan movie. I mentioned earlier, Ludwig Göransson did is the composer for the movie, and this movie and his music sounds a lot like Hans Zimmer, which Hans Zimmer did the Dark Knight trilogy. And this movie had that same feeling. You can feel it, that dun dun, like the pacing with the music and the cuts and everything. It looked and felt like all the Nolan stuff, and of course sounded like it. And Hans Zimmer is a legendary composer, and Ludwig Göransson's on his way. I mean, he also did Tenet, another Nolan movie. He did the first two Creed movies.
Black
He did
Panther.
the theme song. Yeah, Mandalorian. He won the Academy Award and the Grammy for Black Panther. He also did Wakanda Forever. So, I mean, this guy's well on his way. But
he's on a roll.
Yeah. But I didn't know he did the music. So like when I came out of the movie, I was like, oh, wow, Hans Zimmer again. Like it felt like I wanted to watch the Batman movies because it like had that feeling, obviously, without the superhero aspect, but we will talk about the superhero stuff here in a second. As we kind of transition to the cast. And we all kind of touched on the cast a little bit, but is there, Marcy, going back to you, is there anybody else in the cast that or just someone in the cast you want to point out or talk about? Like, because there's so many people in this movie. It's honestly like it's a ridiculous, it's an all-star on top of an all-star on top of an all-star cast. It's an insane amount of talent on screen.
Yeah, absolutely. Like Brittany too, I was very excited to see Josh Hartnett. The last time I saw him was just recently in Black Mirror, but before that, it had been a while since he'd been in anything. So it was nice to see him. I think he did a really great job. Again, you think back to like the 90s roles that he's in and how much he has grown as an actor, especially, because he was gone for such a long time. So it was nice to see him back in such a big movie. But everybody else was great. Obviously, I really enjoyed Matt Damon's performance. Robert Downey Jr. was also great at just playing this character that is unlikable, right? Like he's essentially the villain of the story. He's trying to get his security clearance to not be renewed. So I think he did a great job there. Tony Goldwyn, I like seeing him. Again, I talked about Jason Clarke. He was superb in that role of just somebody that's relentlessly coming for you. And again, like you hate him because you're like, damn it, like stop pestering them with all these stupid questions. And so I think everybody did a great job. Florence Pugh, again, it was such a small part when it comes to like the amount of time she was on screen, but obviously she played a pivotal role in Oppenheimer's life and in the story. So I think, yeah, the cast was, top notch.
Yeah. And so both Brittany and Marcy mentioned Josh Hartnett, and I just want to point out that he was originally going to be Batman for Christopher Nolan back in the day before Christian Bale. So he was being considered for Batman for a long time. So it's kind of interesting that he finally got into a Nolan film, 20 years later. But you definitely, because I haven't seen him in a movie in a long time either. I don't remember the last time.
I think he intentionally took a break.
Yeah, I think so too.
After Pearl Harbor.
I think he might have done like smaller films for a while and then just kind of, relaxed a bit. But
yeah.
But seeing him in this movie, I'm like, man, he could be Batman now. Like that's like I think back then he was probably too young because
Yeah,
he
I agree.
was. I think he's kind of around my age, like he's slightly older or something like. But now it's like he could definitely play Batman. So that was pretty cool to see him
For
show
sure.
up. Obviously, Robert Downey Jr. was amazing. George, what are your thoughts on some of the cast, some of the standouts that you enjoyed in this movie?
I think, like Marcy said, Josh Peck was very surprising to see in this movie. I just kept thinking, Megan, like from Drake
Oh
and
God,
Josh,
Drake
and
and Dodge. Yeah.
that's the only thing I've ever seen that guy in. So for him to be in the Christopher Nolan movie was surprising. Robert Downey Jr. did an amazing job, and everyone was great in this movie. Rami Malek was super random seeing him in this movie. You said one of the Safdie brothers was in it?
Yeah.
Jim?
Yep.
Who did he play?
He was. Let me look it up. I have the information here.
Oh, yeah.
is-
Tellers. Yeah.
Edward Teller. He
The
was
guy who was always sweating.
the father of the hydrogen bomb. He was the guy
Okay. Yeah.
during the Trinity test. He was the one with all the suntan or the lotion on his face.
No, okay,
Yeah.
gotcha.
Guys, we're missing out on one of our favorite superhero characters. Well, technically, I guess you could say superhero. Jack Quaid. Jack Quaid from The Boys.
Oh yeah,
being
from The Boys.
being Feynman, being Richard Feynman, which is hilarious, especially with the bongos. Because for those who watch The Big Bang Theory, I'm a huge fan of The Big Bang Theory. I love Sheldon Cooper. He's a theoretical physicist, much like Oppenheimer and so many others. The episode of Sheldon, never play bongos walking down the stairs. And I'm like, oh my God, this is Richard Feynman. Jack Quaid is Richard Feynman. It's hilarious to me. I thought, like Josh Peck, that was like a very odd kind of cast in a way.
Yeah.
But he killed it. He did great with it.
That's fun.
Gary Oldman was almost, I actually had to look him up because I did not realize that oh my God, I'm spacing out on which president he was. Truman. That he was Truman. So crazy. But I mean, Gary Oldman is just a freaking legend, of course, and he can do anything he wants to do. Truly. And to comment really quick on Rami Malek, sorry. The fact that he was kind of initially kind of like a background character, someone who didn't speak, and I'm like, this man won an Oscar. You better give him a speaking role. And then for him to come out during the hearing for Strauss the way that he did and just like drop the bomb on Strauss's life and just kind of basically say, no, it's not in the best interest to give this man the position that you want to bring him into. Fucking amazing. So good. Emily Blunt, my God. John Krasinski is a very lucky man. Let's just be real. But Emily Blunt also killed it during her testimony, during or cross-examination, if you will, with Jason Clarke's character, and how she just seemed very like distraught and just someone who was just dealing with so much emotionally and mentally. And then she kind of flips the switch and she was just chewing him up and spitting him out with his questions. I thought she was phenomenal.
Yeah, a lot of great performances. And I mentioned before, we've talked about this also, like, obviously you're watching this, we're the watchers, we talk about superhero stuff. There are so many superhero connections to this movie. The first one I want to talk about is the fact that really all these superhero movies and this kind of superhero culture that we're in really started back in 2008. In 2008, there were two landmark movies that came out that year. There was The Dark Knight, directed by Christopher Nolan, which is one of the greatest movies ever, easily one of the greatest superhero movies ever. And also that same year, there was a little movie called Iron Man that came out. And obviously started the MCU. Marvel's the most, successful movie studio. We talked about this many times. I think it's very interesting that Christopher Nolan took Iron Man, Marvel's greatest hero, and turned him into his villain in this Oppenheimer movie. I thought that was masterful the way he did that. And to see Robert Downey Jr. talk about working with Nolan, about how he said, like, this is the best movie he's ever done. And like all that kind of stuff is kind of cool because literally those two movies kind of started all this that we've been experiencing for the past 15 years. It started with those two movies. Now, as far as the actors and the characters in this movie, the tie-ins to superhero characters is crazy. Because in this movie, you have Cillian Murphy, who this is his 6th movie with Nolan, but he played Scarecrow in the Dark Knight trilogy, right? You've got Matt Damon, Matt Damon's just Matt Damon. He's a super famous actor, but also played the actor version of Loki in the MCU. You've got Robert Downey Jr., of course, the aforementioned Iron Man. You've got Florence Pugh, who is Yelena Belova. And we almost saw the full Belova in this movie. We'll talk more about that in a little bit. You got Rami Malek.
That was a good one, Jay.
That was good, Justin. Bravo.
I appreciate it. Yeah. That was a highlight for me in the movie. I was not expecting that. But no, we have Rami Malek, who is Mr. Robot. You've got Kenneth Branagh, who directed the first Thor movie. Jason Clarke, who played John Connor in Terminator Genesis. Tom Conti, who is Einstein in Oppenheimer. He is the caretaker for Bruce Wayne in the pit in The Dark Knight Rises. So thought that was interesting. He went from being in the pit to being the smartest man ever. You've got David Dastmalchian, who is Polka Dot Man in the Suicide Squad. Dane DeHaan, who is Harry Osborn / Green Goblin in the Amazing Spider-Man 2 movie. Alden Ehrenreich, Han Solo in the Solo film. Matthew Modine, who is the cop in The Dark Knight Rises. Like Brittany mentioned, Jack Quaid, who is Huey from The Boys. He's also the voice of Superman in the new animated My Adventures of Superman series. And of course, Gary Oldman, Commissioner Gordon. So just an absolute ton of superhero tie-ins to this movie, which made, added the enjoyment level to me by, 20%. Yeah. Do you have any thoughts on all the superheroes? Yeah.
I didn't realize just how many connections there are. They might not be superheroes directly, but being in superhero movies was just wild to me to see that. And obviously these actors can act. That's why they were cast as whoever they were in this movie. But also, just real quick, I want to point out there's one or a couple of Game of Thrones or House of the Dragon references as well, since we're kind of on the subject of other crossovers. Jefferson Hall, who played Oppenheimer's friend Chevalier, he is a Lannister in House of the Dragon. He plays twins in House of the Dragon.
Yeah.
One of the commie guys, the one
the communist guy.
The information.
Yes.
I don't remember. Well, I don't remember that show, the House of the Dragon show, that much. I need to watch it again.
Yeah. All you need to know is he's a Lannister. He plays twin brothers, and one is kind of interested in Rhaenyra, and eventually
I remember
part of the small council. Yeah.
Okay.
So he's also in it. I was like, hey, I know that guy. So, but just to talk about all these actors who have been in some sort of superhero movie too. David Krumholtz, who I don't know, Justin, if you mentioned him before. I remember seeing him in 10 Things I Hate About You. He was the nerdy AV guy to there
you go.
To what's his name? Joseph Gordon-Levitt's character. So it's just fun seeing a lot of these flashback type actors, from the 90s, early 2000s. Casey Affleck, I nearly freaking lost it when I saw Casey Affleck show up as a general, whatever his character was, because I know that wherever Matt Damon goes, Casey Affleck is sure to follow because they're best friends. And I thought it was just funny.
Well, he's also Ben Affleck's brother, so that's Matt Damon and Ben Affleck are buddies. But yeah, Casey Affleck.
Yeah, but they're basically best friends. So it's hilarious to me.
and Brittany, you mentioned 10 Things I Hate About You. It's interesting. Think about that movie. You mentioned the character, and then Joseph Gordon-Levitt, who was in The Dark Knight Rises. He played
Robin.
Robin basically, and then of course the star of 10 Things I Hate About You, the star of The Dark Knight, Heath Ledger. Yeah, so all those people have made their way to Christopher Nolan movies. That's pretty interesting.
Yeah, I don't know. Like I said, for my 90s child. My inner child is just very happy to see all these 90s actors pop up again.
Yeah, no, there's so many people in the movie. It's just wow. It's I think that was part of the appeal of this movie, because this movie, people were getting excited for this movie for a year or so in advance, is because every so often there were these castings that would drop online. It's Jack Quaid is in Oppenheimer. Robert Downey Jr. is in Oppenheimer. You're just like, how many people are in this movie? And then you see the movie, there's like 100 people that you know
Mhm.
in this movie. It was pretty impressive.
Which I think with RDJ's casting was most comical to me because in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, Howard Stark is said to have helped with the Manhattan Project, and then you get Iron Man himself to be
Yeah, good catch.
involved in a movie.
Yeah, good catch.
Yeah, so I
Wow.
just thought that was hilarious. I'm like, oh, is he going to be Howard Stark? No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
Turns out being the villain. RDJ was amazing as this villain, like just to see his true nature come out as he's, just telling this what do you call it? The Senate aide, Han Solo. I
Yep.
can't think of his name. Just spilling out everything and his true motive. It's just like, wow.
That
Like,
guy's he's so petty, dude. Like he
Yo.
held that grudge for years.
whew,
He didn't
and
let
he's
that
like,
shit go.
he's like, he told Einstein something about me. That's why Einstein didn't address me. I'm like, dude, I need you to take a chill pill.
Narcissist. Warning.
Einstein probably couldn't hear you. Like,
Right.
calm down.
Well, and speaking of the Einstein and Oppenheimer scene, to me, that's like one of the classic scenes of this movie. Marcy, if you want to talk about that scene, that's great. But is there any others, like, what's like some of the best scenes that you can remember from this film?
Yeah, that was a good scene. I think a lot of the scenes with Robert Downey Jr., again, just kind of all he's doing is really talking, right? But he's just kind of recounting how he felt slighted, and like all of these things that he felt had been done to him, or people talking about him, and he turned Einstein against me. And you're, again, like Brittany said, it's just like, dude, like the world does not revolve around you. It's not about you. So I think that was great. Just kind of the moments where you can see Oppenheimer just kind of grappling with the reality of what he's doing and what they're working on. Obviously, it's something that doesn't come without moral implications. So you could see that in the ways that, even just like his face, or just his body was, obviously in the ways he would talk about things. The scene when he's in the White House in the Oval Office with the president, again, he's like, like, I feel like very responsible. And Truman just pretty much like, bitch, I'm the one who said drop it. Like, if anybody feels responsible, it's me. And then just him being so defensive about it and calling him a crybaby and, like saying like, don't ever bring him back. I think that was a great scene. And he, Gary Oldman did a good job of just kind of showing like Truman's disdain for like, okay, like you feel bad about it. Like I feel bad about it, but I also had to make this decision because, whether it's true or not, this might have saved over 100,000 lives and like we ended the war. So I thought that was a really great scene. Again, it was like Gary Oldman was on camera for less than 5 minutes, but he made a really huge impact. So those are the scenes I like, where you can tell that Oppenheimer or other characters are just kind of grappling with like, okay, like this is a huge deal and the repercussions are going to last for a while. So yeah, that's what I liked most about the movie.
Yeah, you really like the main kind of theme that I got from the movie with Oppenheimer is that, he's trying to, through scientific discovery, develop something. And it's more of like, he's trying to do something no one's ever done. But then after he does it, it's like, but maybe I just helped in the world. Like it's like the thing from Jurassic Park where it's like, we thought about, all we talked about was if we could do something. We never thought about if we, how we could do it or whatever, if we should do it, and that's the problem is, they never stop to think about that. And then now, you create a weapon that can, who knows, could destroy the whole world. So that's kind of
sorry. I was just going to say, especially when they were talking about like the science behind it and they're like, wait, based on like this specific calculation, like the chain reaction like may not stop. So like we might just kind of like explode the atmosphere and like by world. So yeah, I like that they kind of added that in there so you can know like that's how big the stakes are. Not only like can you destroy the world figuratively, right? By like bringing all this chaos and like destruction to another country. Like you could literally destroy the actual world if like this one thing goes wrong. So I thought that was great.
Mhm. George, what's some of your favorite scenes from this film?
I think my favorite sequence was like the actual when the bomb actually goes off, like the just everything how they film these like little aspects, like the bomb, like the fission, everything that happens in this bomb inside, and you get to see it. That was cool to me.
It was
One thing-
legit. There was no CGI used in this movie.
So yeah, I saw like a little like how they made the effects and stuff like that. It was pretty cool. What I wish they would have done though, like, is like this movie took place like such like it started right in the beginning or right before World War II, right? So they started like looking into like how to build this, how to do these things, and then next thing you know, like we're just at the point where they drop that bitch, and they don't really talk about Pearl Harbor. They probably mention it like for a second. You don't like. I just wish they would have shown something like that. Like, oh shit, all right, it's time to bust it out for this reason or something. I kind of want to see. It was just like, oh, okay, let's throw two of them. Fuck it.
I mean, yes and no, because when they began the research and doing the calculations, what happened, it was while, of course, the United States was at war with Germany, and then Germany or Hitler died, and then it was basically over. But they did kind of briefly mention Pearl Harbor to say, well, we still have this threat to deal with, and that's why this is still in development, because it took longer than I think what Oppenheimer and company thought it was going to take. So, but I think I understand what you're saying is kind of seeing like the actual effect of their work being done in a way. I understand where you're coming from.
Yeah, it's just like I'm a fan of like timelines and like showing things, because I hate when movies don't do that, and it makes it so fucking confusing. Like for certain things, this one wasn't that confusing, but when they do it in other movies, it's a pet peeve of mine.
So in lieu of seeing the atomic bomb actually being dropped, on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, what did you make of the scene when the bomb, of course, was detonated and everyone's gathered in New Mexico? What was that place called again?
Los Alamos.
Los Alamos. Thank you. Yep. I was going to say Los Cruces. I'm like, no, that's not right. Los Alamos. Everyone's gathered and they're cheering, and they want Oppenheimer to come and make the speech. And he's seeing these people and this bright white light, and their faces like melting off. Like, what did you make of that scene, as opposed to seeing like the actual atomic bomb being dropped?
I mean, yeah, I didn't have to see the atomic bomb part drop, but that part was already like he was showing like, holy shit, this is gonna happen to real people. Like you could see the look on his face. Like I think Marcy had mentioned it. Like he was acting while having to act, dude. Like his face is just so, all the facial expressions that he had. Has such an interesting face too. Mm-hmm. So like you could see the fear in his eyes. You could see like the disgust, like the worry, everything. It was kind of amazing to see.
It gave me a lot of anxiety, because for me, sometimes when I have an anxiety attack, like that's how it feels, right? Like you may be around people and you know that people are speaking, but all you can hear is like either nothing or you hear everything and you can't really focus on anything. So like you could really like feel the anxiety that he must be feeling, right? And it's probably not anything compared to any anxiety I've ever felt, because I've never been part of like dropping a bomb on any nation. So that was like great acting and just kind of great cinematography and part of the story. But I think I liked that they didn't actually show the actual bombs that were dropped on Japan, because I felt like we didn't need to see that, because we know what happened. I think it was powerful to see Oppenheimer having those visions of what happened, because again, he wasn't there. He wasn't able to see the carnage in person, but just his imaginings of it was like, okay, like this is something that weighs heavily on him, and I don't need to see the actual thing. Like I need to see the toll it's taking on him.
We're seeing the toll that Willie's taking on George right now.
The
Yeah.
Woolies.
He's just
So
oh my
sweet.
god. Yeah.
He says, "I want to shower with kisses and be on camera." I think one of my favorite scenes was right from the get-go when we start this movie and Oppenheimer is at Cambridge and he's in the lab. He's fumbling with the lab equipment, and because that's not his forte. Like he's a theoretical physicist. That's, you know, working with his hands and such, like in that capacity, is not something that he liked doing. And so when his professor kind of pisses him off, you know, do it all over again, I'm gonna go get potassium cyanide and, you know, inject that into this apple and leave it on your desk. I'm going to kill you, you know. So
was that real? Like, did he?
Oh, yeah,
really
that's real.
He tried to
That's
kill
real.
his teacher. Damn.
He didn't follow through with it, but it didn't happen the way that we saw it play out in the movie either, where Niels Bohr had the apple, was about to eat it. It happened a different way, but still the impact of he was potentially going to poison his professor with an apple is very Snow White. Anyway, but with that being said, I was like, damn, this guy's like, he's got a short fuse. No pun intended. But just to show, and I see it all the time when I used to work with kids that are part of like a gifted and talented program. If they're not challenged enough, they get bored and then they start becoming a little reckless. And if they're doing something that they don't want to do, same outcome. And Oppenheimer just played it very so. And how the professor even just kind of cut him down when Niels Bohr is speaking with Oppenheimer. It's like, J. Robert Oppenheimer, what does the J stand for? Professor's like, nothing. It's like, no, it does stand for something. It stands for Julius. Like, don't be rude. Don't be a dick. This is why you almost got poisoned. But I don't know. I kind of like that aspect of seeing a brilliant mind still can have some limitations, if you will. And once again, the scene of Kitty Oppenheimer, played by Emily Blunt, being cross-examined by Jason Clarke's character was just awesome. Her repeating herself saying, I don't like how you phrase that question. In other words, she was standing her ground. I'm like, you go, girl. You go, girl. I appreciate you. And just the construction of Los Alamos to create this little very secretive government community, because people lived here for however many years, and Oppenheimer wanting to return the land back to the Native Americans. I mean, I admire that from him, but then the government's like, yeah, no, that's not going to happen. I'm like, well, fuck you. Like, he just gave you the greatest weapon of all time. And you're just like, no, we're not going to give the land that rightfully belongs to the Native Americans back to them. Like, really? Really? Anyway. Yeah, there were just so many scenes, and to see everyone's preparation for the atomic bomb testing was funny to me. You've got Teller, who's got the sunscreen. You got Feynman, who's sitting in the car. He's like, nope, the dash, you know, it's gonna protect me. I'm gonna be fine. And I'm like, if it blows, you're dead.
Yeah, they're like, what about the glass? You know, like
exactly.
Exactly. Yeah.
Exactly. But man, I'll tell you, that delayed boom was whew. Anyone else kind of jump out from their seat a little
I
in
did.
the theater?
I did.
Well, the thing about it is you're waiting for it to happen. And
Mhm.
it doesn't happen when you necessarily think it would. That's the part about it. It was kind of like a jump scare.
It was like a
but-
minute, 30 seconds or something. It took
Yeah.
a while. And when it
Yeah.
does
Yeah.
happen,
Yeah. So imagine that being like on the grander scale and, you know, being
that's
in
part
a
of the
closer
reason to
radius.
see it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's part of the reason to see it in IMAX is just for that one scene.
That one scene.
You know, unto itself.
Mhm.
You know, one of the criticisms I'm seeing for this movie, and this is a criticism for a lot of Christopher Nolan movies, is the female characters don't have a ton of stuff to do. So, Marcy, I want to ask you, like, really in this movie, there's two prominent female characters, They're both connected to Oppenheimer, of course. There's his wife Kitty, and there is Florence Pugh's character Jean Tatlock, who is a romantic interest of Oppenheimer. Also, she's a part of the Communist Party. How do you think those two characters? Like, I mean, now granted, we've already talked about how there's a ton of people in this movie, and besides Oppenheimer, no one gets a ton of time. They all kind of get their little, like ISO moments here and there. But how do you think those two characters fared in relation to maybe other Nolan movies, or just in relation to the other characters in this movie?
Yeah, that's a great question. I wish we might have seen a little bit more of Kitty. I think she probably played an instrumental role in Oppenheimer's life and, helping him through all of those stages. So it would have been interesting to see a little bit more of her. However, like, her real life is very, very complicated and just all kinds of chaotic. So I think maybe it would have been a disservice to include all of that if it's not necessary for the story. And then Jean Tatlock, again, there were some people that criticized, did we really need to see the full frontal? Did we not? I'm of the opinion that it didn't really matter to me. I wasn't for or against. I was just okay, whatever. She was also a very tragic character, but again, she was very pivotal because she played a role in the hearings many years after her death. They were hey, why were you cavorting with a known communist and you spent the night at the house of a known communist? How can we trust you? And, that was part of getting his security clearance revoked. So I don't think there was a disservice really done to her character. Maybe if we would have gotten a little bit more about Jean, but it was just kind of really showing her in relation to Oppenheimer and just kind of their affair or whatever. And then I like that they also just included the doubt that there is behind her death. There are, it was obviously, I think it was first ruled a suicide, but then there are people that think there might have been some foul play involved. So I'm glad that he kind of chose to show two possible versions of what could have happened to her, because again, nobody really knows. It looks like a suicide, but there was also some evidence to point to just kind of other shady things. And, I think this movie and a lot of movies and just a lot of real life shows us that the government can do a lot of shady shit that we have no clue about, because the government was building these two huge atomic bombs that would change the world. And again, nobody had a clue about it unless you were part of the government, a very small part of the government, and then a very small part of the people that were putting this together out in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, no, good point. Brittany, do you have any thoughts on the two female characters that we touched on here?
The truth of the matter is, given the time period that these women existed, is that they had very limited rights, if you will, when it came down to having certain jobs and then being able to access certain information. Because it makes me think of The Imitation Game, which stars Benedict Cumberbatch, Keira Knightley, which is kind of like the British side of what was going on with World War II. They were trying to break a code over there, and Enigma, that's what it was. And Keira Knightley's character, a brilliant individual, her only job in this secret government facility was to be a secretary. I mean, she was pivotal in helping ending the war, if you will, to some degree. So thinking back with Kitty and Jean, they were limited to their stations, and in a way, that's kind of reflected in this movie by having very limited screen time or speaking role kind of thing. Not saying it's right. It's just kind of fitting at the same time. Just because I think the point was already made that these two women were part of the communist USA, and that wasn't enough damage to Oppenheimer's credibility already. And so it's why do we need to kind of drive that farther than what it needs to be? Kitty, unfortunately, had a very complex life, like Marcy said. Oppenheimer's her fifth husband. something like that.
Yeah, in the movie,
yeah.
I think at the time, I think she's like it's like his third
Third or fourth.
Yeah, at that point, yeah. But then she married again after, I believe, right? Or
I don't know about that,
Okay.
but regardless, she's complicated, and then Jean obviously was attracted to Oppenheimer for whatever reasons, be it intellect, be it just he himself. It's kind of an understood point that men of, in this case, men of great intelligence can attract women, and Oppenheimer got some. Let's just,
yeah, I mean, yeah, we got to see it. I was actually surprised by that. It
was kind of a quick cut. It was just like, oh, okay.
Yeah, I mean, I really going to this movie. I didn't really, like I said, I saw it the first like opening weekend, and I did not. I mean, I knew Robert Downey Jr. was in it, of course, Cillian Murphy, but I didn't really know all the other people that were in this movie, and I certainly didn't expect to see Florence Pugh in some sex scenes. But I have to say, her teaching methods were I would say effective, right? I mean, like if you're going to teach somebody to learn a different language, like that's not a bad method to try, right, George? Like you got to.
Jesus.
Oh man, yeah. This is a movie I would not. I didn't expect to see anything like this, like at all. And then the one that tripped me out was the one that when they were interrogating him in that room or asking him questions. Yeah. That one I was like, what is going on? It took me a while to realize. I was like, okay, this isn't real. This is just he's having flashbacks. He's talking about it in front of his wife. I was like, this is crazy.
Yeah, because that's not a Chris Nolan thing. I can't think of another Nolan movie that has like nudity in it. Yeah.
Mm-mm. No, I think
very random.
This was definitely like not maybe a first, but amongst being like just one of the first few films that he's done that's like that. It kind of threw me for a loop. Yesenia here in the chat. Shout out to Yesenia for being here. It says unnecessary. I'm like, I can see that. I like Marcy. I wasn't offended nor like I didn't care. Ultimately, I don't really care. Like, let's just be real. Like, this is a biopic. Like, if it happened, it happened. Christopher Nolan felt, hey, we're gonna put this in the film because it matters, just so you can understand how Oppenheimer felt once he learned of Jean's death and how much that impacted him greatly. Obviously, I mean, he like rode off into the woods. His wife had to go after him, and he's just like breaking down in front of her. And I couldn't imagine being in Kitty's shoes, being like, "Oh, okay, so you're still seeing this other person, but you're married to me. We have kids. Get your shit together. You got to go finish this bomb." You know what I'm saying? Like it's crazy. But obviously, Jean meant a lot to Oppenheimer, and what other way of showing your affection towards someone than through sex? I mean, that's just fact. Okay, let's just be real.
Yeah, and I think it was like, honestly, from Nolan's perspective, I think it was like just a visual way to show that Oppenheimer was a ladies' man. Like, and he was pretty famous for that. I didn't know that until the movie, but like after reading stuff about him afterwards, I was like, okay, so I guess this is just kind of your way to go. Here it is. So anyway,
I wonder what his thought or process of talk dirty to me meant. For being such a brilliant guy.
Very detailed.
in Sanskrit for all languages. Let's just be real.
What she has him say is like, I am
I am death,
the eater of all worlds or whatever. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So like pretty heady stuff given, the weapon he created and what would happen with that. So
I think those little bits and like what Marcy talked about earlier, and I think George too, kind of seeing those visions that Oppenheimer was having throughout, and you kind of like, they kind of seem random, obviously, but in the very end, it's like, you wrap the gift, it all came together, and seeing like those torpedo type clouds, in the sky, and understanding fully, of course, when the conversation Oppenheimer had with Einstein at Princeton, saying, I think, we pretty much just ended the world, if you will. We've given the world its death, and kind of calling back to that poem in Sanskrit that Jean had him recite. It was just so well done and pieced together, just so beautifully.
No, I very much agree. I think the Einstein stuff was interesting because it was almost like, I've talked about superheroes a lot, but having these two characters, they're almost like superhero, like super minds that to have the meeting of Oppenheimer and Einstein on film. Because Einstein almost is like a person, like, I don't know for y'all, but for me, it's almost like, was he even a real person? It's almost like he's like just like a caricature of just this like brilliant person that when you think about it, when I think about it, I don't think about him as actually being a living person who existed. It's just like this character who, you know, like how Mickey Mouse was created and Bugs Bunny. Like obviously different from that, but like, he's just like a caricature of a person.
The difference is one is real.
Well, yeah, I know, but I think you kind of know what I'm saying.
I get what you're saying.
So kind of like wrapping this up, this is Christopher Nolan's 12th film. I'm going to go through the list. I mean, have y'all seen all of his movies? Because I have not seen all of his. I've seen most of them.
I think the only one I was missing was 7, and
he didn't do 7.
He didn't do 7.
No,
what was the other one? It was like 7.
Memento.
Name them off, Jay.
Okay, so
Memento.
His first movie was The Following, or it's called Following. I've never seen that one. In 2000, he put out Memento, which I have seen that movie.
Supposedly, that one's very similar to 7.
Everything works in reverse.
Yeah,
it's an interesting movie. Insomnia, he released that in 2002.
Seen that one.
Then we get
a long time ago.
Yeah, then we have Batman Begins 2005.
Mm-hmm.
The Prestige 2006.
Love The Prestige.
I've never seen The Prestige.
It's so good. It's got Hugh Jackman. It's got Hugh Jackman and Christian Bale. They're both magicians. It's such a good movie.
Okay.
Because that came out the same time that Edward Norton had a similar magician type movie. And I can't think of The Illusionist.
Right.
Very good. Prestige is much better.
Okay.
Okay.
Then in 2008, The Dark Knight. 2010, Inception.
Still haven't seen it.
2012, Dark Knight Rises. 2014, Interstellar. 2017,
long movie.
Yeah, 2017, Dunkirk. 2020, Tenet, and then 2023, Oppenheimer. So I guess, Marcy, start with you. From those movies, like, what's your favorite Christopher Nolan movie?
I would say probably Oppenheimer, because it's not too out. It's not like Interstellar where it's like, this is dragging. It's unlike Inception where you actually know what's going on and you don't really have to think too much about it. And I like movies that are like very dialogue rich and dialogue heavy. So for me, like Oppenheimer, it wasn't an issue that some people have that it's like, oh, it's needing some more action. And I'm like, no, like that's fine. Like I love Aaron Sorkin movies, which are all dialogue. So I probably say Oppenheimer.
Okay. George, what about you? What's your...
Yeah, you already know. You don't even have to ask me.
No, I don't. Which one?
The Dark Knight.
The Dark Knight. Well, okay, yeah, of course. Yeah, okay, Dark Knight. But I guess besides those movies, what's your favorite Nolan movie?
Inception.
Inception, okay.
If it's outside those, it's definitely Inception. Then, like the concept of it, the dreams, like all that shit's so cool to me. I was very fucking confused the entire time, but it was amazing.
God.
So, Brittany, what's your favorite? I mean, I guess you could say with the Dark Knight movies or not, what's your favorite Nolan film?
I'm gonna go with Prestige, and I'm not gonna lie, did not know it was a Christopher Nolan movie.
Really?
I actually didn't know.
Watch it.
You really do need to watch it. I love just for if this will entice you to watch the movie. David Bowie is also in the movie. He plays a pretty big name as well.
When did David Bowie die?
Oh, David Bowie died like, I don't know, a few years ago, like in 2017.
I was like, man, I don't know why I thought he died a long time ago.
Yeah, he did. But yeah, David Bowie's in it. Hugh Jackman, Christian Bale, Scarlett Johansson. It makes you think. It really makes you think. Oh, and also Michael Caine's in it as well. So a lot of actors that have worked with Christopher Nolan in several projects. This one is it's worth watching. It absolutely is worth watching. And I'm gonna throw this out there, Justin. Yesenia says we need a Justin react to the movie Prestige.
Maybe we can do like a first time watching or something, because I've never seen the movie. Yeah, we could talk about it, because I never seen it. I've heard of it, but I've never seen it. So
I was trying to find where to stream it. Apparently we have to buy the movie, so
I'm pretty sure I have it.
on DVD. There you go. You can let us all borrow it.
We're just gonna watch here on YouTube live stream.
Shh.
Yeah.
Justin, if Christopher Nolan did the next Fast and Furious movie, what would that be like?
You mentioned that. Go ahead, George.
I said it makes so much money.
It really
That'd be the
would.
highest grossing movie of all time, the history of cinema.
Did y'all see what I sent about RDJ with Christopher Nolan and the question of if Christopher Nolan directed the Avengers movie? It's like we'd still be filming it.
Yeah, exactly. No, but I mean, Nolan, surprisingly, or maybe not surprisingly, he's actually a fan of the Fast and Furious movies. He's been on record saying that. So
because he's a fan of cinema. I mean, it's cinema. That's art.
Okay.
I mean, people make fun of the Fast movies, but like the stunt stuff in there, and like just like the concepts they come up with are pretty incredible. I mean, like obviously very unrealistic, but like the fact that they
come up with that stuff.
The fact that they try, it's like most people go, "That's too ridiculous." But they're like, "No, it's not enough. Like pour more,
it's not enough.
More ridiculous
gravy. Just pour it on there. We can do this."
And by more people saying this, it really just means Justin. He needs more ridiculous in these movies.
Justin, when does the Fast and Furious come out? I still haven't watched it.
So Fast X will be on Peacock starting on September 15th.
Oh wow,
so long.
So it's
3 weeks.
Yeah, it's still a ways away.
I've been waiting.
You know why, George? They're doing it a day before Mexican Independence Day, because it's all about family.
There we go.
Oh, nice.
God.
Well, and if you want, a Hispanic family film, go check out.
Are they
Blue
Hispanic
Beetle.
though?
No, I'm saying like go check out Blue Beetle, because that movie really is for that culture, and I think you'd enjoy it. But back to Nolan films. I mean, obviously my favorite. I like all three of the Dark Knight films. I think, like, honestly, after each one I watch, I think it's the best one. Like, honestly, to me, they're all three like very close, and they're three of the best superhero movies ever. Yeah.
I'm not a fan of Batman Begins, though.
Oh, Batman Begins is so good.
And you know why? And y'all are gonna hate me for saying this. It's because of Scarecrow. I don't like that character.
Yeah,
Cillian. Don't get me wrong. He killed it. Don't like the character. Just no.
He also auditioned for Batman before Bale. So
yep.
I saw him as Batman. I saw that footage.
Yeah, it's on YouTube.
It's not bad. I mean,
no, it's not bad.
No, it's just one of those things to visually. I could see Josh Hartnett be Batman before Cillian Murphy. Like let's put it that way.
Yeah, no doubt. But I agree with Marcy. I think this is my favorite non-Dark Knight Nolan film. I really enjoyed this movie. I do think, I mean, we've talked about it. It's a little long, 3 hours, but it's one of those movies where I think the first time you see it, you're so locked into the story, and it does, like, it is paced kind of fast. It's just the people in rooms talking, but it is fast because it cuts between the past and the present for the character. But I think I do need to see this movie again to kind of fully, maybe get all the themes of the movie, and just the sheer number of characters just kind of overwhelmed me. And like people like, hey, I know that person from this, and just having them together, my mind was just like, I was thinking about all these superhero things that I mentioned earlier. So
we need a road trip to Dallas to go see it on IMAX. Watchers road trip.
It's probably not even showing there anymore because
damn it.
They have to ship the film back or whatever the fuck they're going to do.
Well, also the other movies are going to be in IMAX or are in IMAX right now. So, but I did want to, before we get out of here, I want to point out this was Christopher Nolan's first movie with Universal, because after what happened with Tenet, Warner Brothers pissed him off when they released Tenet day and day. They put it in theaters the same time they put it on HBO Max, and obviously he didn't like that.
Horrible.
So he left them. He's with Universal now. So Universal does have the Fast franchise. So a Nolan Fast movie is not out of the question. I mean, we laugh about it, but like
It's a
10 years from
possibility.
now, if he's making Fast 14 or something, who knows? Like,
It probably would take another 10 years to get to 14. Good God.
Can you imagine an Oppenheimer ride at Universal Studios? That would be insane.
Everyone would be dead. What are you talking about?
that would
It
be.
just feels like you're part of the bomb, and that would be.
Did y'all see? It's kind of like how the MCU does their timeline. It's like for 2023, Oppenheimer. Then next year, it's like Niels Bohr. Then after that, it's Feynman. And so they're just going to do a movie for every single member
Every
of the Manhattan
scientist.
Project. I think that's fantastic.
The scientist cinematic universe.
Oh my God.
I'm down for it.
Can't wait for it. So as we wrap it up here, let's get everybody's final thoughts on Oppenheimer. Marcy.
Great movie, loved it. I think the fact that I had seen a documentary before really helped. So if anybody after watching Oppenheimer, you're like, what the hell? Check out The Trials of J. Robert Oppenheimer. It's on Prime. That's where I watched it. So very informative. But no, great movie overall. Very
cool. George, final thoughts.
I will be watching that documentary because I love history stuff. But overall, I thought the movie was great. I will probably rewatch it after I watch the documentary stuff whenever it's on streaming and check it out at home again.
Yeah. Brittany, final thoughts.
I mean, I second what George is saying about watching that documentary. I'm fascinated by it. I know that this movie was heavily based off the book that was written about Oppenheimer. So I'm also interested in reading the book as well. And this is just, I think it was brilliant for Christopher Nolan to take a biography of one of the most prominent individuals in America's history and make you care about the character as opposed to caring about what he contributed to the world. I walked out of that movie just feeling terrible that, he experienced all he experienced. And, that's what great art is about. It makes you feel something. So well done, Christopher Nolan and cast. I absolutely enjoy this movie. Definitely would go see it again in theaters. But yeah, great movie.
Yeah. And I second all that. Given the director and given the subject matter, I think this is a must-see movie. I think everyone should see this movie at some point. And I'm looking forward to it. Just like George said, whenever it drops on Peacock, I'm going to watch it again. So now that you know what we think about the movie, we want to know what you think about it. And Brittany, how can people tell us what they think about Oppenheimer?
Well, as always, we encourage those to participate in our live chats, just like Yesenia did. She is a longtime fellow watcher with Watchers in the Basement. We appreciate you being here and sharing your thoughts with us. For those of you who are checking out the replay, we invite you to always join our live chats. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, hit that like button, and hit that notification bell. That way you know about our next live stream. But also, doesn't end there, y'all. We are also on social media. That's right. We're on Facebook, X, formerly known as Twitter. It's still weird to, try to say. Instagram, and now Threads. We're on Threads, y'all. So go check out, go follow us on every single one of those platforms. Don't forget to use the hashtag Watchers Basement when talking about us so we can help grow our audience. Send us your memes, send us the things that you want us to check out. And lastly, if you're not into our video podcast, we've got you covered, y'all. We are available for audio podcasts through Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and Spotify. Be sure to follow and subscribe on all those platforms as well. And give us a 5-star rating because it does really help us out. We really enjoy doing these podcasts for y'all.
Yes, we do. So thanks, Brittany. So for Brittany, for Marcy, for George, I'm Justin saying thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time. Have a good evening. Bye-bye.
Boom.